Welcome to another draft analysis video. My name is PlatinumHowler, coach of your Delta Gligars, and today marks the beginning of our first ever title defense. Yes, we were the Season 6 IBL champions as the Coquitlam Red Gyarados, but that franchise has been retired, and we are now returning as the Delta Gligars in Season 7, looking to defend our crown. This is not your typical draft analysis video, however. It comes with a twist because we have a guest with us, and this guest is actually a Delta resident and Gligars fanboy. He goes by Electricity on Discord. He also runs the NCL, which I've been uploading content for the past couple of weeks. Please welcome my friend Ian.
Hello, welcome to the video, and I'm here too. Yes, hi, I'm ready for this. I don't know anything about the team, so I'm looking forward to running by pick and being as surprised as everyone else.
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to do this is just for a change up on the draft analysis videos. So Ian, I've consulted with him on many of my past drafts, including my IBL Season 6 championship draft. However, this time we did not talk about the draft at all, so Ian knows nothing, and he is going to be surprised every time I tell him which mon that I picked. So that's cool. So important things to know. Last season there were only 12 coaches, and this season there are 16. So it was one big 16 coach draft. Pretty standard tier draft with a designated Gigantamax slot that you could, depending on the tier of the mon that you take, you can either get points or get extra points or lose free points. And the one big difference between this draft and the APA Academy draft was that Gmax Pokemon are allowed to hold any item that they want. So whereas in APA, Gmax Pokemon must hold some form of Pokeball to basically render any possibility of them running like a Choice Scarf or a Life Orb. That can't happen in APA, but you can do that in the IBL. And the other important thing about Gmax Mons is this draft, the Tier 1 Gmax Mons only cost 20 extra points instead of 40. So that is that was one thing that that factored heavily into my draft planning. So we'll get into that. I am the back wheel for this pick, and I cannot tell you how much I hated being the back wheel in this draft because of the Gmax points system that I just explained. Because by the time I get to pick, all of the good Gigantamax Pokemon are already taken. So usually I would be totally fine being the back wheel, but in this draft I did not appreciate that at all. So I had this perfect plan of the first two mons that I was going to take. The first 14 picks had been made, and it was a weekend morning or something, and I was planning what I was going to take, waiting for the person right in front of me to make their first pick. I believe that was Cowpat. And so what I was going to take was Gigantamax, Charizard, and Dracozolt for my first two picks. However, what do you think Cowpat took with the 15th overall pick in the draft?
Gigantamax Charizard.
Yep. He took Gmaxar right before I had the chance to, so draft plan totally out the window, and I had to start from scratch. All the good Gigantamax Mons were already gone, so I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to be taking a Gmax Mon this round. Let's look for two other Mons that I think would pair well together. Other than, I didn't really have a plan for a team around anything at this point because of that Gmax Zard snipe. That was really, really disappointing. But anyways, the first Mon that we ended up taking was Terrakion out of Tier 1. So Terrakion is actually Ian, you're not going to like this very much, but Terrakion ended up being the fastest Mon on my entire team that I drafted.
Well, it's Galar deck, so I mean, I can't really fault that.
Right. Yeah. Like in APA, I made a conscious effort to I took Weavile second. Because I wanted to make sure that I got something really fast, but in this draft I didn't end up prioritizing that as much. But oh well. So 108 is the fastest speed tier that we have. As we go through each Mon, I'm going to put more emphasis on the buffs to each of their move pools that they've received in Generation 8. So really with Terrakion, the major buff to its moveset is the fact that it now gets Mega Horn, so it's able to deal heavy damage to bulky psychic types that would otherwise give it a lot of trouble. And it's actually even more accurate than Stone Edge, which is really nice. So it's quite a reliable option, relatively speaking, on Terrakion sets now. So Ian, anything you wanted to add on Terrakion? Think it's worth a round 1/16th overall pick?
Yeah, definitely 16th overall, especially in Galar decks. There's not a lot of good options. So that is probably fine. Like, I think if you're playing Nat decks, I would maybe call you a bit of a clown for taking Terrakion 16th, but I think it's fine. It gives you setup options, gives you rocks right off the bat. It's a nice speed tier right off the bat. It's a solid dark resist right off the bat, which I think is pretty useful in this meta. A really good physical breaker, and like you said, the Mega Horn buffs means that it's not really walled by all that much anymore.
Yeah, definitely not something I would have considered taking if we had Mons like that were allowed in the NCL, for example. Terrakion would not have been a great Mon to pick at that point in the draft in the NCL draft, but I mean, I should talk. I took Rillaboom with the 9th overall pick, so. Okay.
Standard drafts, I could definitely see like Terrakion's kind of more of a last round sort of pick if it's still there and you still need a tier 1. But in Galar decks, you really need to just sort of take what you can, because once you get later down, you're not looking at much usable that's left.
All right, so the Mon that I decided to pair with Terrakion is a new Generation 8 Pokemon, one that I think it would be really cool to try. And for some reason in this draft, a lot of the new Gen 8 Pokemon were tiered very low, I would say under-tiered. And one of those Mons that I believe was under-tiered that I picked up right away was Grimmsnarl, tiered in Tier 3, which I don't think you see all that often. Usually every other draft that I've seen it tiered, it's been in Tier 2, so I jumped at the opportunity to use it as a Tier 3 Mon. So good value pick, good dark type right away, starting to build that like fighting dark psychic core, and you'll see later on we have a very strong psychic type to round out that core. So obviously Prankster Screens, T-Wave. There's a Rest Talk set that you used not too long ago with Grimmsnarl that I thought was really cool. Bulk Up is good setup for it. It works well with its signature move Spirit Break, because you can boost your defense, and then when you go for Spirit Break, you're lowering the target's special attack. And then 120 base attack Sucker Punch can hit really hard. The only thing that I think these two Mons pair really well together. However, they do share two weaknesses in Fairy and Steel, so we're going to have to cover that up in future picks. But I think they can work really well together, especially if you manage to get up Prankster Screens with Grimmsnarl. As I said, they do share weaknesses, so that I think really opens the door for like weakness policy Rock Polish Terrakion sets. Which I think could be very, very deadly if I can manage to get that set up right. So, your thoughts, Ian, on the first pairing?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the first things I thought is like, oh wow, you can just like SD behind screens super easily, and the metagame's pretty slow, so you kind of just win the game at that point, as long as you don't miss Rock Slide or Stone Edge on mobs that you need to click that against. This is very... I wouldn't be surprised if you had TJ helping you draft this right now, just with the first 2 picks. I can kind of see a very TJ or Daniel-esque sort of thing going on here. Like, I noted down screens, and that's obviously a really viable strategy with Grimmsnarl. It's super easy to get them up because of Prankster anyways. And like you said, that bulk up set, I love using that one just because of how effective it can be if you get the right sleep talk rules.
Yeah.
And the lack of Tapu Koko really helps in that, where you're not screwed out of clicking rest all the time, because the only electric train setters are auto electric train setters and Kirchen.
Yeah, like I see most people default to the Prankster screen set, but I definitely want to try to bring more variety in my Grimmsnarl sets, because I think it can do a lot more than just be a Prankster screens mon. Especially, like, it has a base 120 attack stat, for God's sakes. Like, I want to be able to abuse that.
The kill leader on that team that I was using it on.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it got like 15 kills or something in 7 games. So
damn.
It's pretty potent offensively.
All right, so I had to wait a whole 30 other picks before I got to take my next 2 mons. And as I said, the 2 shared weaknesses that I already have between Terrakion and Grimmsnarl being Fairy and Steel, I wanted to patch that up right away. So I decided to take Arcanine from Tier 2. Good Fire type, obviously, that resists both those types that I mentioned. And reliable recovery right out of the gate, so this is going to be a mon that can resist a lot of the hits that my first 2 mons wouldn't want to take, and it can recover off HP with like Morning Sun. It's also at base 95 speed, the second fastest mon on my team. So Terrakion is the only mon that's above base 100. Although I didn't know this, but Arcanine actually gets agility, and this is not a new addition to his moveset. It always got agility, but you've probably just never seen anybody run it at all. Have you ever seen agility Arcanine do work?
I've seen it run, but not do work.
Fair enough.
It already kind of sits in a 4 move slot syndrome for itself, where it wants recovery on defensive set versus offensive set, of course, but an agility set, you're not really running a choice item, where it really can kind of shine on more like banded sets. And then a life orb set, you'd rather have Morning Sun than agility anyways, so it's strange, but usable.
Yeah, I think the thing about Arcanine is the majority of its strongest physical attacks involve recoil, like Flare Blitz, Wild Charge. You're going to be wearing yourself down quite a bit over time. So, and if you're counting on getting that agility off as well, then you're likely to take some damage in the process of that setup turn. So it's probably why you don't see it as much. As far as new additions to its moveset, it does get a couple of new coverage moves in Play Rough and Psychic Fangs. Those are really the only notable additions.
Technically it had Play Rough in Let's Go.
Oh, okay. I don't count that. I didn't play Let's Go. I'm not considering Play Rough, from Generation 7 to Generation 8. Are we considering... what do we even call Let's Go? Generation 7.5? Sure.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So, Psychic Fang's actually pretty cool because it can destroy screens that my opponent might want to bring. I don't know how, I guess I already have one of the most prevalent screen setters, and it's immune to Psychic Fangs anyway. So, I don't know how often I'll bring that, but always nice to have good coverage. Play Rough can hit dragon types that otherwise would take on most of Arcanine's attacks pretty well. So, any final thoughts on the Arcanine?
It did have Outrage before, but locking yourself in Outrage doesn't sound like it's one of the best things that Arcanine can ever do.
Yeah.
I wrote down Fire Immunity, which isn't relevant yet, but I'm assuming it's going to come into play later once you actually get a Steel type. And Intimidate support, I think, is just even more helpful with like Grimmsnarl screens for getting set up. I had something else and then I forgot about it, so that's not important, clearly, because my brain doesn't remember.
I didn't really draft Arcanine with the Flash Fire in mind. It was mainly just to, cover the weaknesses that I had created with the first couple picks. But you did mention...
I know what it was. There we go. Justified. That's where I was going with this. You basically have like 3 dark resists in quotations with Justified as well. So no one is going to be clicking dark moves against your team with double Justified.
That's true. I'm not sure how often I've seen Justified Arcanine, but it probably won't. You probably won't see it on this team either, considering how strong my team is against dark types already.
Yeah. First 2 picks, I don't really think the dark types stand a chance in the first place, but it could happen.
Okay, so moving on. Next, with my 4th pick, I took my Gigantamax Mon, and the Mon that I drafted is not the Mon that I currently have. So I made a huge mistake when I drafted this Mon because I guess I forgot for a second that Grimmsnarl was a Fairy type. And at the time, I drafted G-Max Alcremie. And then after a little while, I was like, why the hell did I do that? Why did I double up on Fairy types so early like that with Alcremie and Grimmsnarl? That just doesn't make any sense. So at the earliest opportunity I had, which was right after I made the final pick of the draft, I swapped out my G-Max Mons and I planned the rest of my draft knowing that this was the exact move that I was going to make, and I was kind of just praying to God that nobody would snipe me of the Gigantamax Mon that I actually wanted, which was Duraludon. So that's going to be my G-Max Mon. And as you were saying, Arcanine with Flash Fire to pair with a Steel type. Well, my Steel type is not weak to fire. So there you go. So that transaction does not count against one of my transactions for the season, because there was a 24-hour grace period between the end of the draft, starting from the end of the draft, and then the next 24 hours you were allowed to make, I believe, 1 or 2 transactions at no cost. Duraludon, not the biggest move pool in the world, but I feel like it has all that it needs for the most part. Flash Cannon, Dragon Pulse, Draco Meteor, Thunderbolt, Dark Pulse, good coverage options. It can also make decent use of Body Press because it has a decent base defense stat. Of course, its biggest weakness is that it's pretty frail on the defensive side, especially defensive side, I mean. But keep in mind that this Gigantamax Mon can hold items, so it can hold an Assault Vest if it wants. It can hold a Choice Scarf, so that it can overcome its middling base 85 speed. Its 2 abilities, light metal, heavy metal. Stalwart's not really going to come into play in singles, but I think generally you will see more use in the light metal ability because it won't take a ton of damage from moves like low kick, for example. Heavy metal, not necessarily useless because it does have a base 95 attack and it can fire off heavy slams if in the right matchup, I guess, but most of the time you are probably going to want to be using special attacks anyway. So yeah, what do you think about Duraludon, Ian?
I hate this Pokemon.
Whoa, come on! Why?
I drafted it myself, and it just never had matchups. Every team that I went up against always had a strong enough special attacker that it just threatened it out because it's so bad on the special defensive side. It's another rocker for you, which is good. I'm pretty sure the G-Max move is really bad because all it does is lower a move's PP by 2 or something.
Yeah, I mean, the G-Max move definitely isn't the best.
It would be maybe a little bit better if it got Flamethrower. It's maybe a little bit more usable. Body Press is fine for hitting other steals, but Flamethrower is just better when you're trying to run especially offensive sets. I don't have any experience with Dynamax or Gigantamax for the most part, so I'm not sure how much better this is when it gets the giant HP buff, but as a regular Pokemon, Duraludon's pretty bad.
Yeah, this was another Gen 8 Mon that was tiered low-ish. It was actually also tier 3, and I don't believe that the regular Duraludon form got drafted at all. Which I guess isn't terribly surprising.
Yeah, I grabbed it where it was tier 4, and it was still bad there.
Wow.
I wish I'd grabbed another.
Well,
steal.
I mean, that probably wasn't Nat Dex league, right? So I guess that makes more sense for why it might have been tier 4. When we saw this Pokemon announced, I don't think anybody could have thought that it was going to be so weak on the specialty defensive side, and so to the point where resisted hits like a Hydro Pump from a Rotom Wash, for example, is almost a 2-hit KO. It's
like people saw it and they're like, oh, it's got Dialga's typing, which is great typing defensively and offensively. And then it just doesn't have the stats to back it up at all.
I do think that the fact that it can Gigantamax and it can hold an item like Assault Vest or Scarf or something will make this better. Like, I can bring this in and outspeed something with a Scarf, and I can click an attack. If he switches something in that resists that attack, I can Gigantamax up on the next turn and be able to switch up my moves freely for 3 turns. So playing around that for my opponents I think is going to be really difficult. And I'm looking forward to using this Mon, and hopefully it doesn't suck as much as it sucked for you.
No, yeah, I completely I think with the Dynamax move boosts, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like Max Knuckle and things like that, I think it's a lot more usable than just a regular Duraludon.
Yeah, it can boost its defense with Max Steel Spike. So if your best ways of hitting it are with physical attacks and it gets a couple of defense boosts off, then it can be staying on the field for quite a while. So another 30 more picks went by, and first 4 Mons I developed sort of a ground weakness, and I definitely don't want this draft to be a repeat of the APA Academy draft where I just have no answers to ground types whatsoever. There's a funny story behind this. So there's another coach in the league named Mario B, and he ended up he took Rotom Heat, which was a snipe of Ruppy. Ruppy wanted to take Rotom Heat, and then Ruppy ended up taking Rotom-Mow. But later on, before it was my turn to pick again, Mario B typed in the chat, "Why did I just realize that I accidentally drafted Rotom Heat instead of Rotom-Mow, because Rotom-Mow was what he wanted. But Rotom-Mow was also what I wanted, and that's what I ended up getting." So 3 of us all wanting different forms of Rotom, and I was the only one that ended up happy when all was said and done because I got the Mon that I wanted.
That is hilarious. Classic drafts, honestly.
So Rotom-Mow right away, I think this is a really good defensive pivot option for our team because it, of course, is immune to ground. It also resists water because we have 2 weaknesses in Terrakion and Arcanine, and 1 resist already, which is not the greatest resist, being Duraludon because it's kind of frail. So I just think this is a really good Gloomon for the team. Of course, the only real addition to its moveset would be Nasty Plot. And I don't think Rotom-Mow is the best the Rotom form that can make use of Nasty Plot because if it has to run Leaf Storm, then it's just going to be lowering its attack, and it won't be able to keep the Nasty Plot for a long time. I feel like Rotom Wash and Rotom Fan are probably the 2 better Nasty Plots users, but it definitely could come in handy if I if I'm hitting most things with Thunderbolt and I don't have to rely on using Leaf Storm all that often, I think Nasty Plat Rotom-Mow could definitely come in clutch. So what do you think about this pick?
So I'm actually completely the opposite. I think that Rotom-Mow and Rotom-Heat are the two best Nasty Plotters of the Rotom forms because you get two really strong base 130 moves off. One of them will be boosted, and then the next is just regular power, and you essentially probably just get 2 kills with that. I mean, I don't necessarily think that Electric Grass is like the best typing in the world, but I am a huge fan of Rotom-Mow myself, and it's again the same sort of thing with Rotom-Heat is that I think both of them can use Nasty Plot better than something like Rotom-Wash, which wants a Will-O-Wisp, wants Pain Split, Defog, and whatnot. One question I do have is this post-home? Like, do you have access to defog on Rotom?
Oh, yes. Yes, this is definitely post-home. So this would be the first defogger on the team. And we have, on this team, we have 3 defoggers, no rapid spin. So that's some foreshadowing.
That's really a terrible thing. I mean, you're going to be forcing people to defog with Grimmsnarl screens anyways, so, or at least tech break, so that... I think this is fine, honestly. It's the water resist thing is it's a very good point with how Duraludon is.
Yeah. Okay, so moving right along, my next pick was another tier 3. So with this pick, we're going to be dipping into our free points. We're going to take 100 of our free points away. And it's another pick that resists ground, and I think this is another mon that's really going to help the team because it gives our slow-ass team some sticky web support. So we got Araquanid from tier 3. I can see this mon being brought to a lot of games for us because, as I said, our team is pretty slow, and it could really make use of some of the sticky webs. It's also a fighting resist because in my first 5 picks, I have 2 fighting weaknesses and no resists. My fairy type does not resist fighting. So, I mean, I don't think Araquanid is the best fighting resist in the world because a lot of fighting types can pack coverage like Thunder Punch and Stone Edge. But as far as fighting resist go, this is all I have for the moment, but my next pick is also going to be able to combat that a little bit. The biggest addition to its move pool this generation would be Hydro Pump. Not something you're probably going to see all that often, but I do think that special Araquanid sets deserve a little bit more attention than they get, because I think Scald is a very viable move, honestly, to run on Araquanid. You don't see it all that often, but I think just being able to get burns on things can be really helpful, and if you're wanting to break through like a really physically defensive mon for whatever reason, then and like Specs Araquanid Hydro Pump is going to be doing some damage if you you know, in the right matchup. So I think this fits the team, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, your points about Special Araquanid are kind of niche to say the least, but
Yeah.
Water Bubble is pretty broken as an ability, so Special Araquanid is definitely not out of the way there. The first thing that I noticed about Araquanid in general is you noted Hydro Pump is a notable new move, but it actually got Spiderweb removed. So the trapping sets that Araquanid kind of likes to run sometimes to beat other bulky waters aren't really viable anymore.
I didn't know
really
that. That's very interesting that you bring that up. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I only learned that yesterday, but it doesn't really matter because you already have Rotom-Mow, which is like the premier water killer, like just with both typings. It's just really good at breaking waters. It is unfortunate now that you mentioned on the last pick that you didn't pick up Rapid Spin while you have webs, but again, I think they're going to be forced to defog on you with screens anyways, so you're probably not going to have to run removal all that often when you have webs with screens.
Yeah, honestly, this generation I have really scaled back on the importance of hazards. I say more so the importance of hazard removal. I still use hazards to a degree, but not quite as religiously as in the past. I really don't think it's condemning a team if you don't have Rapid Spin in this generation.
Yeah, I agree. I guess another thing that I just thought of off the top of my head is that your team is looking like they enjoy wearing Tims. I'm a big fan of Arcanine and Arachnid running heavy-duty boots, which is the most broken item in the entire game right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're wanting to deter mons from like wearing heavy-duty boots, or you're wanting to cripple any mons that choose to wear that item, knock off is a good thing to have to be able to knock them off, so that when they come in the next time, they actually are taking hazards damage. But as we've been over, my team is pretty well equipped to deal with knockoff already. So I think Arcanine and Arachnid are mostly safe in rocking the boots. Lots of games this season.
Yeah, I like it. It's last kind of thing on my end is that you've got a Trick Room setter in Duraludon, I believe, and you kind of work around that with Arcanine.
Whoa! What is this Duraludon Trick Room business? I have, not to my knowledge, it doesn't get Trick Room. I'm gonna have to look this up now.
No, it does not. Never mind. I was remembering how.
Okay, that would have been pretty cool. Trick Room Duraludon into like Banded Arachnid. That would have been really cool.
Well, now I'm excited because you mentioned this really powerful Psychic, and pretty much every Psychic type gets Trick Room, so there's still that on the table.
Right, so that was my next pick, again, after I waited another 30 picks, but I talked about rounding out a very strong Psychic fighting Dark core, so our Psychic type is something that I've always been wanting to draft, but for some reason I never did, but we did get it this time, and we got Reuniclus out of Tier 1. That's going to be our coming out of our free points once again. So 2 free points mons taken. So we have 120 free points left. Reuniclus, Magic Guard, really good set. Regenerator also, like Magic Guard, Regenerator, 2 extremely good abilities to have on the same Pokemon. Manual Psychic Terrain is really the only new addition to its moveset, and one move that I really wish that it got, but it sadly doesn't, is Body Press. If this mon got Body Press, this mon would be insanely broken, in my opinion. But it's really sad that it doesn't, and it kind of makes sense that it doesn't, because it's just a squishy thing, so why would it be doing damage with its squishy body? But yeah, because it gets means of boosting its defense too, so like its special defense is actually naturally higher than its physical defense, even though you probably see it running max defense sets most of the time, because it can boost its special defense with Calm Mind and something like that. But if you ran like max special defense, iron defense, body press, recover, this mon would just be insane. But fortunately, it doesn't get it, so it's still it's not broken yet. What do you think about Reuniclus?
Well, I think you're wrong. I think it's very broken, and I'm surprised that you either didn't notice that it got this, or you're downplaying it for some reason. But did you forget that Reuniclus got stored power? Like, this mon is so broken now.
Oh, is that okay? Yeah. I didn't realize that. No, I was actually going to mention that another mon that I picked up later on got stored power, but I guess I wasn't paying too much attention to the additions that it got. But Reuniclus getting stored power is super insane. Like, especially if you don't have, if there's no dark type on the opposing side, which, you know, we've mentioned ad nauseum. My team deals very well with dark types. And so if the dark type doesn't come, Iron Defense, Calm Mind, Recover, Stored Power, GG.
It's very consistent. I find that Reuniclus is actually more consistent this generation than it was last generation because of that, and I just love the team synergy that Reuniclus brings here. Like, it's such a good fit on this team.
Also very powerful Trick Room Sweeper in its own right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Life Orb 3 attacks Trick Room is just really, really strong.
So next we have to take the first of our 3 tier 4s. We're about to take back to back tier 4s, and followed with our last pick will be our tier 5 mon. So with this mon, we're gonna take our ground type out of tier 4, so we're gonna get Piloswine. That's gonna be our 3rd out of 3 stealth rockers on our team. Piloswine, you know, not much variance in the moves that it's going to run week to week. It's basically Stealth Rock, Icicle Crash, Ice Shard, Earthquake, Toxic. Some variant of some 4 of those 5 moves is likely what you're going to see. But I do believe that there is some value in running like a Rest Talk Piloswine set, maybe even with Curse. And then it can become really, really bulky. This thing can actually be really bulky. Like on the specially defensive side, only base 60 special defense, but its high HP stat kind of makes up for that, and it can sponge a lot of hits. For some reason, this thing gets dual screens, which I think is really strange. Why this mon over some of the other mons that get one screen and not both? But it's not like I'm going to be running dual screens Piloswine when I have a Grimmsnarl on my team. New addition to its moveset, Sand Tomb. Probably not something I am seeing myself bringing at all, but as far as new moves that it gets go, Sand Tomb. And that's a new move that it gets. And because it is bulky, like a Rest Talk Sand Tomb set that with like Toxic Spikes up, I don't even know why I would say that, because I don't have... Actually, that's not true. I do have Toxic Spikes later on. If this thing can take on a lot of hits from a lot of different things, then Sand Tomb could be a nice niche set to bring 1 week. So, yeah. How do you think Piloswine fits here, Ian?
I think Piloswine is criminally underrated pretty much every single draft. You'll see some leagues where they prioritize it a little bit higher because they know how good this Pokemon is, and others where it falls to round 7, 8, which is probably way too late for it. I think maybe round 6 is a good spot for Piloswine. Yeah, this one's broken. You chose a really amazing ground type, and in Galar decks in Tier 4, I think it's extremely high value for you.
Broken as a Tier 4 ground type, you would.
Yeah,
like, as far as Tier 4 ground types go.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is the next coming of Excadrill, but like it's probably Tier 3 value in Galar decks, in my opinion. So I think it's under-tiered. I think he got it at a great time, like later than I would have expected it. And, it does do the same thing pretty much every single game. I would maybe add Roar onto the list of moves that you talked about, just for phasing potential. It's pretty useful that way too.
That's not a new addition though? It probably always got Roar, right?
Yeah, it's had before, yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's pretty much it. Just to your point about it getting dual screens, I think most of the Pokemon that were in the first 2 generations got access to dual screens through TMs and whatnot, and that's probably why.
Yeah, I guess.
They distributed it like a lot back then, and then you transfer Piloswine up.
Now, dual screens Piloswine, that would be something that Daniel or TJ would run for sure.
Yes. Completely irrelevant because you already have a bunch of ice resists, but with Thick Fat it is ice resist, so it adds on to the Araquanid plus Arcanine covering for Rotom.
Yeah. So, the next thing that I wanted for this team was a Ghost type, because I feel like I am going to be relying on Sticky Webs being up a lot, so having a Ghost type to spin block is going to be really important. So really, the only Ghost type that I wanted to take out of Tier 4, there were some other Ghost type options like Dusknoir or Dusclops, but I've had my experience using Dusknoir before. I wanted to try something different and something that's much improved in this generation. I'm very excited to use this. We got Drifblim as our Ghost type. Drifblim, very similar to Wigglytuff, a mon that we had on our last season's IBL team. When you compare their base stats, Drifblim is actually slightly bulkier than Wigglytuff all around. It has 10 base points higher in HP, and it's only 1 point lower in physical defense. But it does have the ability, of course, to burn things with Will-O-Wisp and lower the target's attack while regaining its HP with its cool new addition to its moveset in Strength Sap. And it also has 4 base points higher in special defense than Wigglytuff. So this thing can hopefully, put in some work one of these weeks. I think it's definitely more of a niche mon on the team. One thing that kind of upsets me though, with all of these mons getting such cool new additions to their movesets, why the hell did they not give Drifblim Air Slash or Hurricane? That makes me so upset. Like, Terrakion gets Air Slash and Drifblim doesn't. That makes me so mad.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate and say it's because they know that it has unburdened plus acrobatics. That could definitely be something that I would consider bringing 1 week, but because then its best physical ghost type stab would be like Phantom Force, which is very you can play around that fairly easily sometimes because it being a 2-turn attack and all. But yeah, I just really wish it got Air Slash. Not it doesn't make too much sense for it to get Hurricane, but there's no reason why it shouldn't have Air Slash, and it makes me mad. But so this is going to be our second defogger as well, and our tier 5 is also going to be able to defog. So do you think Drifblim is a decent tier 4 mon in this generation? Well, I didn't before. I just pulled it up and started looking at the moves, and this thing's actually really scary. I didn't realize that it has this much move pool. There's a lot here. I didn't realize it got knockoff. It's kind of strange to me that a hot air balloon gets knockoff. Are you allowed to stat pass?
No, I really don't think baton pass is allowed, but this thing is one of the better baton pass mons, I think, because it can baton pass so many different stats. It can baton pass Calm Minds, Amnesias, Stockpiles, but I don't think we'll be baton passing anything with Drifblim other than perhaps a substitute. I'm not sure if that's within the rules or not.
Tailwind for speed control. I just learned that it got Sucker Punch. That's really cool. Where else was I going with this? There's something else that I am also forgetting. Flare Boost, which is really cool, and I had no idea that was even an ability.
Yeah, really random ability. The only mon in the decks that gets this ability, but if the base 80 speed is a good speed tier against the opponent, it Sticky Webs up, and we can get our Drifblim burned with a Flame Orb. Then we can basically be firing off Choice Specs Shadow Balls and Choice Specs Thunderbolts and Psychics. So while it does get Strength Zap, I think the one unfortunate thing about it is that because it has such a high HP stat, it's not going to be recovering as great of a percentage of health that a lot of other mons with Strength Zap, like for example, Galarian Corsola only has base 60 HP. So whenever it uses Strength Zap, it's recovering almost all of its HP. It's going almost all the way back up to full. But in Drifblim's case, I think the minimum HP it can have is 225 or something like that at level 50. So a lot of the times when you use Strength Zap, especially if you're using it against something that's generally not a physical attacker, you're not going to be regaining as much health as you would on some other ghost types. But it's still really cool that it gets Strength Zap, and it definitely is a beneficial add to its moveset.
I don't have anything else for it. It's a good value pick.
Alright, next, our last tier 4, second to last pick overall. We do not have a poison type for the team yet, so we took Garbodor out of tier 4. I'm not a huge fan of this mon in general. I think it's just the definition of mediocre. If you look at his base stats, that would they are about as mediocre as you can get. But again, another niche mon. It's a grounded poison type that can deter toxic spikes from coming against me, and it can set toxic spikes in its own right, as well as just regular spikes for chip damage. New addition to its moveset this generation, it gets Cross Poison, which probably doesn't seem too significant, but because it didn't get Poison Jab in past generations, its if you wanted to run a poison move on Garbodor, you were basically forced into running Gunk Shot unless you wanted to run like Sludge Bomb off of base 60 special attack. And you know, Gunk Shot's good and all, but it's not all that accurate and has a 20% chance to miss every time. So Cross Poison, while definitely not as powerful, will always be hitting, so you can get that consistent damage off with Garbodor if you need it. Yeah, I don't really think that much else of Garbodor. What about you? Do you think it's a little bit better than I'm pitching it to be?
Gets Body Press now, so it doesn't have to rely on Drain Punch to hit steals. I guess that's something that's kind of usable.
Yeah, I agree. I think Body Press Garbodor can be quite helpful. Actually, that is a good point.
I don't really see much else in its moveset. Like, it already got Spikes and Toxic Spikes. I think Spikes is still really broken. Like, all throughout Gen 7, people were kind of underrating Spikes until at the end of the generation, and then they were putting a really high priority on it, and I think that the priority on Spikes should still be high, even though more Mons are starting to get access to it, just because it's really consistent against grounded Pokemon that resist rocks. And that's about it. I know, you can boom after you press Spikes, and then you can go into Grimmsnarl and set up screens, and then maybe track you under Swins, I'm not sure.
Yeah, definitely forces the opponent to think about their hazard removal quite a bit, because I now have 3 Rockers, Sticky Web, Toxic Spikes, and Spikes, all on the same team. So plenty of hazard options. Last pick, if you're looking at everything that we've got so far, we actually have every single typing that there is in the game except for a normal type. So we're going to grab our normal type out of Tier 5 now, and it's going to be another flying type that does get Air Slash and Hurricane, and that is Noctowl. Noctowl was the last pick of the draft. I'm pretty excited to use this Mon. I think this Mon is a very good, like, sleeper Tier 5. Very, very specially defensive, base 100 HP and 96 SPDF. It's kind of like the opposite of Duraludon, where it's pretty frail on the physically defensive side, but on the specially defensive side, it can take quite a few hits. It has, like, Duraludon base 50 SPDF and Noctowl base 50 physical defense. Tinted Lens, very, very good ability, especially with like Air Slash and Hyper Voice available to it. Air Slash mostly. Additions to this moveset, it now gets Nasty Plot, it now gets Future Sight, Stored Power. Again, this is the Mon that I mentioned. I looked up, it got Stored Power, and I didn't realize that Reuniclus also got Stored Power. So we have 2 flying types on our team, one of which has actual flying type stab that it can take advantage of that's not acrobatics. One of which is immune to ghost type moves. And the other which is weak to ghost type but is immune to fighting type moves. This thing is not going to be wanting to switch into fighting type moves. So I think Drifblim, Noctowl actually complement each other pretty decently as low tier flying types here. It's another defogger. I think Cycle Shift is really cool on this Mon because it is so naturally specially defensive. And if it naturally outspeeds what it's going up against, it can Cycle Shift a burn onto something. And that can help out with its weak physical defense stat, and it can 1v1 a plethora of things. So, any experience using Noctowl at all? Do you think it can maybe help the team a little bit?
I have no experience with Noctowl, but I tell you what, I love low tier value, and I love low tier breakers, and Noctowl looks like a phenomenal breaker. Nasty Plot looks disgusting on this Pokemon. Nasty Plot, Tinted Lens, Hyper Voice just looks so spammable. Especially with webs, like base 70 Mon, with webs, there's not a lot that wants to switch into that later. It's kind of fun that it gets Magic Coat, not that you're necessarily going to be going up against that many hazards. I knew, as soon as I saw a Psycho Shift on this, I knew you were going to start talking about that. So I don't have to bring that up, because that's great. So I always remember that Latias set that you had.
Yeah.
And Sword Power, of course. It's pretty much just going to be spamming flying and psychic type moves, but it does get like Moon Blast and stuff for coverage, extra sensory. So, there's options there. Calm Mind, Sword Power, of course. Nasty Claw, Sword Power. Reliable Recovery and Roost. There's not really much more to add to that. It's another Tailwind user. It's another Phaser with Whirlwind. Insomnia is kind of cool. Amoonguss isn't in this metagame, I don't think, though.
No.
Sport,
no.
Really?
Yeah, really, I think the only Mon in the entire Galar Dex that gets Spore is Shiinotic.
Okay.
So everything else is like relying on like Sleep Powder, Hypnosis, something like that. So
Tinted Lens is probably going to be run every single time that you bring this, but I do think this could be a good... I'm not sure. Do you know Scrappy 10?
Scrappy 10, is that a person's name?
Yes, never mind. That clearly answers my question.
No.
He was laddering in Gen 7 OU with Noctowl and had quite a bit of success just like randomly spamming Noctowl on the ladder, and I think it's actually going to be quite good.
Awesome. I hope it puts in I hope it comes to at least one game. I'll keep the bar low for Noctowl's expectations.
My expectations are 4 kills this season.
Oh gosh, that's a high bar to live up to. All right, so that's the entire team. What do you think of the team as a whole, Ian? Do you think it's a championship team, something that we can repeat with?
Okay, so I'm a little bit iffy on a couple things. I do think it's a championship team. Personally, I probably wouldn't draft exactly like this, so it's hard for me to sort of judge that because we do have very different playstyles. Like, I know I really hate using Arcanine and I really hate using Duraludon, but I'm hoping they can put in work for you on this team. I'm very happy to see that Alchemy's gone, because it's quite possible that G-Max Alchemy would have been way worse than Duraludon, even if you didn't have Grimmsnarl. I love the low tier value. That's like the biggest bring for me here, is that like Piloswine through Noctowl I think are 4 fantastic picks. Like, I think you just fleeced the bottom of the draft there. I'm not sure what everyone else was taking, but it looks like they probably got garbage or like NFEs that weren't usable. Reuniclus is disgustingly broken, and I think your fighting Dark Psychic is probably the best in the entire league, and I wouldn't even doubt that. Webs is disgusting, Rotom-Mow is really good, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on here. I think especially offensively wise, you're going to be really relying on Reuniclus a lot. Like, it just looks like this team trends a lot more towards the physical side, or you're going to bring Noctowl more than you're expecting. But I like the hazard support. It's well-rounded type-wise, of course, it covered everything. The speed, I don't even think is that big of an issue. Like, even with 108 as your fastest thing, everything else is like spread out nicely. It's not like there's anything repeating besides maybe Rotom-Mow and G-Max Duraludon kind of like next to each other. But with webs, I don't think it's that big of an issue. Screen setup, especially with Reuniclus and Tracheon, is going to be very, very oppressive for people, and they're going to have to tech Brick Break or run Defog against you every single week if they don't want to just outright lose to something like Reuniclus plus Grimmsnarl. And that pretty much sums it up. I think that's all the points that I have.
Yeah, I do agree. The physical offense is definitely more prevalent than special offense. But, you know, Arcanine can be run mixed sometimes. You can see, I think Arcanine, what's it got? Base 100 special attack. Yeah, that's not terrible. So, yeah. So, schedule for IBL. This, I don't actually really know what date this is going to go up, but team builders prior to the battle, team builders are going to be separate from the battles, and team builders go up on Saturdays, followed by the battles on Sundays. Sometimes the battles might go up on Mondays because we're planning on doing like a Monday Night Football sort of thing where we vote on which game of the week we want to be showcased on as a Monday upload. So we might get 1 or 2 games or something that go up on Monday instead of Sunday. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this little back and forth between me and Ian. Ian's links will be down in the description, of course. He uploads a number of his Showdown League games, and his so he does separate team builders and battles as well. So yeah, definitely go check him out. Be sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you keep up with all of our Draft League content. Thanks for watching, guys, and thank you, Ian, for being my co-host for this video.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
All right, we will see you soon with the first team builder and battle for the IBL.